What the potholes, empty houses and US military planes landing in Shannon Airport all have in common, outside of their three things that piss me off? Well, information relating to all three of those things would be subject to the Freedom of Information Act 2014. So the Freedom of Information Act 2014, it is one of those ones that gets thrown around quite a bit. It is one of those ones that gets misunderstood and misused. So today we're going to break through some of the myths and we're going to show you how you can really apply it to make a difference for you and your community. First introduced in 2014, the Freedom of Information Act relates to any public body that essentially spends public funds. It could be anything like government departments, Department of Housing, Department of Transport, Department of Education. It could be bodies like your local county council, the HSE, and in limited cases, the Gardaí. Anybody can use the Freedom of Information Act in order to request information from public bodies. You do not need to be a solicitor, you do not need to be an activist, you do not need to be a lawyer, you don't even need to be an Irish citizen. If there's information, records, data there, and you request them, they are accessible to you. No need to explain, no need to give them a reason. All you have to do is ask for it. So the type of information and the type of data that you're requesting might be different depending on which public body you're requesting it from, and I suppose what kind of issue you're looking into. So for an example here, I'm going to be putting in a Freedom of Information request to 3 public bodies in relation to the one issue, which is US military planes that are landing and refueling in Shannon Airport before transferring God knows what around the world. So the first thing we're going to need to do is understand what information are we requesting? Is that information already publicly available, or is part of it somewhere publicly available? And is this information that the government or the public body would actually record and have on hand in a file, in a filing cabinet? So in terms of our example in relation to the flights, there is a lot of information that is available publicly. So we've broken this down into the date of the flight, where it departed from, where was its destination, what was the Irish airport that it landed in, what is its flight number, also known as call sign, what is the reg number, what is the hex number, what time roughly it landed, what time roughly it took off, and any notes being whether they are a civilian reserve air fleet or a direct US military aircraft. So the information that we've been able to gather is actually quite a lot on this. We can see that the flights are happening, we can see where they're coming from and where they're going to. But what we want to know is what communications have these flights had, both with the Irish government, and out of curiosity, I'd like to know what the conversation was between the air traffic control and the flights as they landed, as well as departed from Irish soil. So in order to do this, I had to do a little bit of research. When it comes to US military planes, they fall under diplomatic rules, which means that they must have an exemption or they must directly communicate with the Department of Foreign Affairs. Department of Foreign Affairs is a public body. I know from public data that these flights have happened. So now I'm going to send a list as a Freedom of Information request to the Department of Foreign Affairs and request that they provide me with any and all communications that have happened in regards and relation to these flights. That's the first public body. The second public body that I'm going to look at is in relation to the CRAF, or the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. These are private contractors that are contracted to the US military to ship personnel and parts, weapons, etc. around the world. So when it comes to civilian transportation of weapons, ammunition, etc. through Irish airspace or through Irish airports, they must contact the Department of Transport. But we're going to send the details of those flights to the Department of Transport, and we're going to ask for any and all communications relating to these flights that may or may not happen between the company and the Department of Transport. So the third and final Freedom of Information request I'm going to put in as part of this example is going to be to the semi-state body known as AirNav. AirNav are the ones who look after all of the air traffic control here in Ireland. Are a semi-state body, which means that they are a public body using public funds, so we should be able to send them a Freedom of Information request. The main thing to keep in mind when it comes to Freedom of Information requests, you do not need to give a reason, you do not need to have a reason. Pure curiosity is enough for them to have to obey the law and provide you with the information that you're looking for, as long as it exists and as long as it's not excessive, etc, etc. So I'm going to send a full list of flights to AirNav and ask for all communications, audio, digital, text, etc, and see if they come back to me. So you've sent your Freedom of Information request. What happens next? Well, the public body will have 30 days to respond to you with that information. If they do not respond back to you after 30 days, you can send them what is known as an internal review, which means that they then have 15 days to either act on the decision, or if they have rejected you, you can again ask for an internal review. They'll have to review your case and come back to you then within 15 days. If after the 15 days they don't respond to you or they reject you again, and again you're not happy about it, you can then go to the Office of Information Commission. You do have to pay a small charge to them, but once you pay that fee, you can then ask them to investigate it. And again, they will take their time before they get back to you. One of the big mistakes that I hear and see quite often in relation to freedom of information is people saying that they will request a random question or data that clearly and obviously doesn't exist. Always make sure that what you're asking for, that you are providing as much information in relation to the topic as possible, and that you are fairly squared away and narrowed as to what information it is that you feel is missing that you would like to get your hands on. In my experience submitting FOIs, they are going to take as long as possible in order to get back to you. So make sure that you don't forget about it and you have something set for those 30 days. And again, the more information and the more research you show them that you have done, the more seriously they're probably going to take your request. If you'd like an update to see whether or not these guys got back to me, or you'd like to see more informative videos like this, please do smash that subscribe button. Still feels kind of awkward saying that, but thank you very much for watching and much love.